Hey guys, I am going to talk to you about why I like Call to Adventure. This is a Kickstarter that came out in the last year, and I'm going to do a little, just kind of a quick run through on how the game plays, not a full tutorial. Then I'll come back and I will tell you why I like it. So I do want to say up front that I did get the Kickstarter version of this game. So this lovely playmat, that's like a foam playmat, does not come with the base game. This is Kickstarter, and all of these cards have special card sleeves. This is what, I mean, actually it's the same artwork on the back, but it's just a sleeve to protect it. That makes the artwork still look good. Everything else is true to the base game. So in order to start building your character, everyone's going to be dealt character cards. They'll be dealt 2 origin cards, which is like the basis of your story. You'll also be dealt 2 motivation cards, which I guess is what happens to drive you throughout your life, and 2 destiny cards, which is what you are destined for in your life. So out of those 2 cards, you choose which one you want. The first 2, origin and motivation, are going to be seen by everyone. Your destiny card will be hidden and only seen by you because it is an end game scoring card. But you can look at all of these together and see how they work together. Generally, you want to try to find cards that complement each other. So let's see, I was dealt for my origin cards, Performer and Sailor. I'll explain how some of these things work, but they come with, this one comes with a stamina and a charisma icon, and then during a challenge, if at least one of your runes shows a stamina or charisma, you gain an experience point. The Sailor has strength and intelligence, and once per turn when they fail a strength or intelligence challenge, they could pay 2 experience points to try again. Those are examples of some origin cards. For motivation, we have a choice of Thrill Seeker, which is once per turn. You can spend an experience point to gain a dexterity rune for that turn. And Trained by a Master, once per turn, you may spend an experience point to gain an additional strength rune until the end of your turn. So I might look at those and say, you know, I feel like the Sailor and Trained by a Master cards kind of go together, because I'm already going to be trying to do challenges that have strength associated with them, and this will give me more strength. So let's say I will choose those. I will choose, I am a Sailor, and I am trained by a Master. And then I'm also going to choose a Destiny card, the Intrepid Explorer. At the end of the game, you gain 1 triumph point for each stamina or intelligence icon you have, and one triumph point for each type of story icon in your story. The story icons are these guys up at the top of the card. At the end of the game, you'll score based on multiples that you have of those. Like if I had 2 mountains at the end of the game, I'd get 2 points, 3 mountains would be 4 points, 4 mountains would be 8 points. I could also be a cunning villain. At the end of the game, you gain 5 tragedy points. If I have a sword, a dexterity, and an intelligence icon, and 1 tragedy point for each the sad masks in my story, and this includes 1 sad mask in it. And because I've chosen the Sailor, I already start with a sword and an intelligence, so the only thing I would need to get in the game to get an additional 5 tragedy points at the end would be a dexterity icon. So maybe that's a good one to choose. So that would go face down. So I'm a Sailor, I will be trained by a Master, and at the end of the game I will be turning into a cunning villain, but nobody knows that except for me. I mentioned runes and challenges. Those aren't going to make sense yet, they will in a minute. I did mention triumph and tragedy points. Those are what you're trying to get in order to win the game. They collectively make up the point total, which in other games would be called victory points, in order for you to win the game. You have a track on your player board. You start here, and depending on where you are on this track, it will let you play either hero or anti-hero cards. You can get hero and anti-hero cards usually by casting runes. I'll explain that in a minute. But these are hero cards, those are anti-hero cards. If you are up here, you can only play hero cards. Here you could play hero or anti-hero cards, and down here you can only play anti-hero cards. And where you are at the end of the game will give you points. Up here you get 8 triumph points, down here you get 4 tragedy points. If you go all the way down here you get 0, and if you go all the way down to the bottom you get -4 triumph points. I'll explain how you move around on that track in just a moment as well. The game takes place over the course of 3 acts, and this will happen through the use of story cards that are laid out on the main board. At the beginning of the game, the cards in the first act, the first row, are available, and you can see them. It's not until someone in the game reaches the second act that the next ones will be turned over, and then someone has to reach the third act in order for these to be turned over. On your turn, you can choose a card. If it is just a card like this one just has a prerequisite to pick it up. When you gain it, you gain a dark moon, which would mean that you would move down on this track, and you'd have to also spend 2 experience points. And everyone starts with 3 experience points. That would let you draw an anti-hero card that you could later play, and 2 tragedy points. And if you pick that card, since this is Act 1, this would go underneath your origin card like that. And that contributes to your story. You'll always have these signs visible, so you know that you have either those points or those attributes. And this furthers to tell your story. Now you're not just a sailor, now you're an orphan sailor. And then the next card will get turned over and play moves to the next player. The other type of card that you can encounter are challenges. Here's a type of challenge. This is a magical test. So the actual card name is here, magical test. In order to attempt this challenge, you have to have either an intelligence icon or a charisma icon somewhere on your character board. And then you have to choose which path you want to do. You can either go for arcane ability. This is the reward. This would give you a story icon and another intelligence icon. Down here, if you did sorceress talent, that would give you another anti-hero card and some charisma. So how do you do a challenge? That's where the runes come into play. Let me show you. Okay, these are runes. You always get to cast the white runes, no matter what. 3 of these are successes. That's no success, that's no success. And that means you get to choose either a hero or an anti-hero card. So if you were to cast these runes, which means roll, the best result you could get would be a 3. And that's very low for attempting these challenges. This challenge, for instance, you need to have a success of 4 or greater in order to get the card. So that's not going to do it. But if you're attempting this challenge, then it means that you have at least either an intelligence icon or a charisma icon, which means you can add those runes to your throw. So for instance, for our character, the sailor has an intelligence icon. So he can add an intelligence rune. One side of this is a success, and this side is 2 successes. So now you could possibly get 5. You could also possibly get 1. So you get somewhere between 1 and 5 when you throw these runes. If you want to increase your chances further, you can spend an experience point to add a dark rune to your throw. These are dark runes. One side is a success, the other side is 2 successes, but if this comes up when you cast your runes, you have to move down 1 on your corruption track, which is this track over here. But once you've decided, then you cast your runes, which is rolling them. Move that out of the way. We're going to cast some runes. So that is a success of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got the Dark Moon, which means I'd have to move down 1 to here. But it also means that I would get this card. Say I had declared Arcane Ability. So then, this also goes underneath your pile, showing the rewards up at the top, and again, adds to your story. If you fail a challenge, the card that you're attempting gets discarded and you gain an experience point, and then it's replaced. So you cannot go back and repeatedly attempt a challenge. Now you're an orphan sailor who has Arcane Ability. If I had chosen the challenge at the bottom, then you would put it underneath so that the bottom part of the card sticks out, and those would be the rewards. Once someone gets 3 cards underneath their origin card, and it comes back around to them at the beginning of their turn, you reveal Act 2. And once someone gets 3 cards underneath their motivation card, then you reveal, at the start of their turn, you reveal Act 3. But all the cards you encounter in the game, in the basic game, are either going to be the cards that you just pick up if you fulfill the requirements, or a challenge card. You can get as many icons as you want of a particular type in these cards, but you can never cast more than 3 runes of that type. And the 3rd rune that you get is different. So the first 2 runes are the same. These are the ones that look like this. The 3rd rune will have 2 successes on one side, but on the other side it will have a special symbol. And that special symbol will correspond to what's listed on the bottom of your player board. For instance, this is a white triangle. If you cast this, then it allows you to draw a hero card. The other 2 ones are a dark triangle, which allow you to draw an anti-hero card, or a diamond, which allows you to gain an experience token. And those are specific to whatever type of rune you're casting. The dark triangles are with the dexterity. The diamonds are with Constitution. So over the course of the game, you're going to alternate turns. You'll be able to spend experience points and gain experience points. You'll get hero cards, you'll get anti-hero cards that you can play. Some examples of hero cards are, let's see this one. You play this before you attempt a challenge, and you can add either an extra wisdom rune or an extra charisma rune to your attempt. With Leap of Faith, this turn you gain +1 to attempt a triumph path, or +2 to attempt a star path. That's one of the story icons. You play those, and once they're played, you're going to set them aside, keep them next to you, because they will score you points at the end of the game for cards that you play. Some anti-hero cards. These are generally negative for other people. In this case, it's a harsh lesson. You play this if somebody else failed a challenge this turn, you gain an experience point. That's not as bad as some of them. This one, you discard and replace 1 revealed challenge or trait that would be out on the board, and you gain +1 to your next challenge attempt this turn. So that's actually good. There are the ones that are the worst are the ones that force someone to redo a challenge that they already succeeded at. Ugh. So over the course of the game, you're going to be gaining these different cards and adding them to your story. So let's say we get, I'm just going to fill some in here. He learns forgotten lore. And then he has to pay a bribe. Oh, and then he steals from the rich. But maybe he keeps it for himself. I don't know. That's part of your story to come up with. And then again, you keep your destiny card hidden. But once someone has 3 cards underneath their motivation card, then when it's their turn, you flip over the final act. These are mostly going to be challenges. And you can go back and you can take cards from any row once they've been exposed. Just because you're filling your destiny card doesn't mean you can't go back and choose one of these other cards if it would benefit you. Just usually the rewards are going to be better the farther down you go into the acts. But it does mean that the challenges are going to be harder. If there's ever a situation that there are cards that you just don't want and there's nothing that's good for you to choose from, you can pay an experience point to get rid of one and replace it. It's called Journey. And in the very rare case that there are no cards available that you can even do, like there are no icons that match your icons, there's no requirements that you can meet, then you can do the same thing, but not pay an experience point. So he's going to do some other stuff. He slays the Archmage. He leads the rebels. And, oh, he's going to bargain for power with Ancient Evil. And then at the end of the game, you'd reveal your Destiny card, and that would give you scoring points at the end of the game. All right, so here is our score sheet for the end of the game. First, you score any of these white diamonds. Those are triumph points. Not many in this particular story. Right there are 3 triumph points. You also score for tragedy points, black diamonds. We got a few of those. Black diamonds here, 2 of those, 3 here, 2 here. And the Destiny card scores tragedy points as well. That particular Destiny card. You also get extra points for any experience tokens that are left over. You get points for every hero card you have played, every anti-hero card you have played, and then you get points for your story icons, the multiples, and that is explained at the bottom of the score sheet. Like in our case, we've got 1, 2 scrolls, which would give us 2 points, and 1, 2 scales, which would give us 2 points. If you had another one of either of those, you'd get 4 points. So you try and collect multiples of those if you can. Some people like to save their storytelling for the end. They like to look back and complete a whole narrative about everything that happened in their lives. Some people like to play where you tell the story as you go. Every time you get a new card, you tell your story further, or you can even step back and explain something that has happened that has led you to where you are now. But at the end of the game, not only are you going to have some number of points that may or may not win you the game, but you're going to have a complete story arc about your character from the very beginning to the very end. When you are ready for a more advanced game, you can add in allies and adversaries. Allies are found in Acts 1 and 2. Adversaries are found in Acts 2 and 3. Allies will give you a special ability. Usually it's either spend an experience point to gain something or sacrifice the ally to get it. That's generally what they all are. It gives you usually another icon or another rune to cast for a challenge. But if you keep the card, you get a story icon. Sometimes you get a point. Adversaries are the big baddies. They are the equivalent of a challenge, so you would cast runes in order to try and defeat them. This would be, you would want intelligence and wisdom, and you would need to have a success of 6 in order to beat him. When you're attempting the challenge, you can discard an anti-hero card to gain +1 to that challenge. And the rewards would be a scroll icon, 3 triumph points, and an intelligence rune. If you are playing a solo game, you combine all of the adversaries together in a pile from Acts 2 and 3, you shuffle it, and then you pick one at random, and then that is your big boss that you're trying to get to at the end of the game. And there's a card you pick out of a separate pile that tells you what will happen during the game because of this particular boss that's out. This adversary, in solo mode, you would slide this card under to say that you need to have, at the end of the game, the very, very last thing you do, instead of getting a 9th card, you have to defeat the adversary. If the adversary ever has 5 experience tokens, they win. And that gives this adversary +2, so instead of 6, it would have to be 8. Whenever you fail a wisdom challenge, the adversary gains an experience token. So you'd have to keep that in mind if you're ever going to attempt a wisdom challenge. Whenever you gain a star story icon, then you take an experience token from the adversary. So that's how you can balance out inadvertently giving him tokens and then taking them back. You can play multiplayer, either competitive or co-op. Competitive is just like I explained when you would add in the allies and adversaries. If you play co-op, then you have a big boss adversary at the end, like you do in the solo game. That wasn't the greatest explanation. I imagine I just made the game seem much more complicated than it is. It's one of those games that once you sit down and play through it, you realize it's actually very simple. So why do I like this game? There are a few reasons. The number one being storytelling, 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 storytelling. Okay, that is my favorite part of this game. Every time I add a card to my story, I like to tell the story as it goes. And you can make it as dramatic as you want. You can make it as simple as you want. I love finding my character as the game progresses. And somehow I try to choose my 9th and final card as like a climax of the story, if you will. Instead of just being another card, I want it to be something that finishes out the tale that I'm telling of my character. Ideally, it's nice to win the game too, but I really prioritize the storytelling in this one. Honestly, if you're looking for a game where you just try and optimize points, you go, I want this and this, I'm gonna combine this, so I wanna try to get this one because that'll get me an extra point here, and this, oh, and the last one, I'm gonna min-max it because I gotta try and get the one that gets me the most points, and you don't care about the storytelling, it's probably not the game for you. This game is very much about storytelling, and I've had a lot of fun doing that. I enjoy the solo mode. It's actually quite good as a solo game. I like having the adversary at the end because it gives you an additional goal throughout the game. If you do a game with an adversary, you have to pick your origin, motivation, and destiny cards first before the adversary is revealed. So, you know, for instance, with this adversary, you know that you need to have these icons. In order to fight him, you need strength and wisdom. So if you were picking this first, then you could pick your character cards that would complement that. But since you don't get to, then you have an additional challenge perhaps. If you didn't start with either of these icons, then that will inform some of your choices as the game goes on. I also am a fan of the runes. I wasn't sure that I would be, really. I was kind of, I just wasn't sure if I would like the feel of these versus dice, but they make a nice clack noise together. They're made of good material. They feel nice. Inevitably, because there are 3 that you always cast, those 3 white ones that you always cast, I find myself inadvertently playing with them, which makes them a little warm for the next person. It's probably not a benefit. And it works. It works to cast runes. I thought for sure that it would be like easy to just kind of line them up and slide them out, but that's not the way it works. They really do roll out and cast just as effectively randomly as dice would. And if you're not sure about whether or not you have enough runes to possibly pass a challenge, they do include a probability chart in the rule book. So you can see what your probabilities would be based on the different runes that you are using for your challenge. I love choosing character cards in the beginning. That's a lot of fun. At the very beginning, I'm not as concerned about necessarily my player's overarching character story yet. Maybe I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about how these cards are going to work together, but that story is more going to be told in the story cards. At the beginning, you're kind of just trying to pick ones that complement each other, which will make you possibly more successful as the story goes along, and just building a framework for your character. And last but not least, let us talk about the artwork. The artwork is absolutely stunning. Some of the best artwork I've ever seen in a game. I almost get chills talking about it because you feel so immersed in these stories. And it's almost like if you don't know what to say about your story, you have words, you don't know what to say about the words, just look at the picture. use items from the, or use elements from the picture to help you tell the story. It's just phenomenal. Look at this guy. Look at this rogue elemental. It's beautiful, and because they're nice and big, you get really full artwork. It's just, really is lovely. They did a phenomenal job with the artwork on this game. So that is Call to Adventure. Love this game, love the storytelling. Can't wait to play it again. Thanks for visiting the Dragon Table. I hope I'll see you next time.